When photographer Maria Santos was hiking through the mountains of rural Greece in October 2023, she expected to capture beautiful landscapes. But when a desperate German shepherd mother began following her, refusing to leave her side, Maria had no idea she was about to stumble upon a tragedy that would haunt her forever. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. And please, watch this story until the very end, because what Maria discovered will absolutely break your heart. Maria Santos, a wildlife photographer from Portugal, had traveled to the remote mountains near Meteora, Greece, to capture the autumn colors for her upcoming exhibition. She'd been hiking alone for 3 hours when she first noticed the dog. At first, I thought it was just a stray looking for food, Maria later recalled. But there was something different about this dog. She wasn't aggressive or begging. She was pleading. The German shepherd was clearly a mother. Her swollen belly and the way she carried herself made that obvious. But what struck Maria most was the dog's behavior. Instead of approaching for food or attention, she would run ahead a few steps, then stop and look back, as if trying to lead Maria somewhere. "I've photographed wildlife all over the world," Maria said. "I know animal behavior. This dog wasn't just following me. She was trying to communicate something urgent." The dog, whom Maria would later name Athena, continued this pattern for over an hour. She would run ahead, stop, bark softly, and look back with what Maria described as the most human-like expression of desperation I've ever seen on an animal. Finally, Maria made a decision that would change both their lives forever. She decided to follow Athena. Athena led Maria off the main hiking trail and into dense woodland. The terrain became increasingly difficult, with steep drops and rocky paths that seemed dangerous for both human and dog. "I started to worry I was making a mistake," Maria admitted. "We were getting further from civilization, and the weather was changing. But Athena kept looking back at me with such urgency that I couldn't turn back." After 45 minutes of difficult hiking, Athena suddenly stopped at what appeared to be an abandoned stone shelter, probably an old shepherd's hut from decades past. The roof had partially collapsed, and thick vegetation had grown around the entrance. But it was what Maria heard next that made her blood run cold. Weak whimpering sounds were coming from inside the ruins. My heart started pounding, Maria remembered. I realized Athena hadn't been trying to lead me away from the trail. She'd been leading me to her babies. Maria carefully pushed aside the vegetation and crawled into the makeshift den. What she found inside would stay with her forever. If you're invested in this story, hit that like button now. And seriously, don't click away, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Inside the collapsed shelter, Maria discovered 4 tiny German shepherd puppies, barely 3 weeks old. But immediately, she knew something was terribly wrong. 3 of the puppies were completely still and cold to the touch. They had died, likely from exposure and starvation. The 4th puppy, a small female, was alive but barely breathing. "I've never felt heartbreak like that moment," Maria said, tears in her eyes even months later. Athena had been trying to save her last surviving baby, and she somehow knew that I might be able to help. But the situation was even more tragic than Maria initially realized. Athena herself was severely malnourished and dehydrated. She had clearly been surviving on whatever scraps she could find while trying to keep her puppies alive in the abandoned shelter. She must have given everything to try to save them, Maria reflected. The mother's instinct was so strong that she was literally dying trying to keep her babies alive. The surviving puppy, whom Maria would name Hope, was hypothermic and desperately needed immediate medical attention. But they were miles from the nearest town, and Maria's phone had no signal in the remote mountains. Maria faced an impossible decision. She could carry one puppy out, but not both the mother and baby together. The hike back would take hours, and she wasn't sure either animal would survive the journey. That's when Athena did something that brought Maria to tears. Understanding the desperate situation, Athena gently picked up her surviving puppy and placed her directly into Maria's backpack. Then she stepped back and sat down, as if giving permission for Maria to save her baby. "It was the most selfless act I've ever witnessed," Maria said. "This mother was so weak she could barely stand, but she was willing to let a stranger take her last surviving puppy if it meant the baby might live. Maria made the agonizing decision to carry Hope out first and then return for Athena. She wrapped the tiny puppy in her jacket and began the treacherous hike back to her car. Every step was torture, Maria recalled. I kept thinking about Athena waiting alone in that shelter, and I kept checking to make sure Hope was still breathing. The hike that had taken an hour with Athena's guidance took Maria nearly 3 hours alone. By the time she reached her car, Hope's breathing had become even more labored. Maria drove at dangerous speeds to the nearest veterinary clinic in Kalambaka, a town 45 minutes away. But she knew that every minute counted, not just for Hope, but for Athena, who was still waiting in the mountains. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice to save an animal? Your stories always touch my heart. Dr. Yannis Kostas, the local veterinarian, immediately began emergency treatment on Hope while Maria frantically explained about Athena still being in the mountains. The puppy was in critical condition, Dr. Kostas later said. Severe hypothermia, dehydration, and malnutrition. But she was a fighter. While Hope received 4 fluids and warming treatment, Maria organized a rescue mission for Athena. Dr. Kostas contacted the local animal rescue organization, and within 2 hours, a team of volunteers with proper equipment was heading up the mountain. The rescue took place just as the sun was setting. When the team reached the abandoned shelter, they found Athena exactly where Maria had left her, sitting vigil over her 3 deceased puppies, waiting for help to arrive. She didn't resist when we approached, said rescue volunteer Elena Papadopoulos. It was like she knew we were there to help, but she kept looking around, clearly searching for her surviving puppy. The reunion at the veterinary clinic was emotional for everyone involved. When Athena was brought in on a stretcher, barely conscious from dehydration, Hope somehow sensed her mother's presence and began crying softly. Dr. Kostas placed Hope next to Athena on the examination table, and despite her weakness, the mother dog immediately began gently licking her puppy. It was a moment of pure love, Dr. Kostas observed. Even in her condition, all Athena cared about was comforting her baby. Both Athena and Hope spent the next week in intensive care, but slowly, miraculously, they began to recover. Maria visited them every day, and it became clear that a special bond had formed between the human who had answered a mother's desperate plea for help. I couldn't leave them, Maria admitted. After everything we'd been through together, they had become family. Maria made the decision to adopt both Athena and Hope, taking them back to Portugal where they could start a new life together. But the story doesn't end there. Maria's photographs of the rescue went viral on social media, raising awareness about stray animals in rural Greece. The images led to donations that funded a new animal rescue shelter in the region, a shelter that has since saved over 300 abandoned animals. Athena's desperate plea for help didn't just save her own puppy, Maria reflected. It created a legacy that continues to save lives every day. Today, Athena and Hope live happily in Maria's home in Lisbon. Hope has grown into a healthy, playful young dog, while Athena has become the gentlest, most grateful companion Maria has ever known. Every morning, Athena still looks at me with the same expression she had that day in the mountains, Maria said. But now, instead of desperation, it's pure gratitude. If this incredible story of maternal love and human compassion moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing rescue stories that prove love knows no boundaries. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. I love connecting with viewers from everywhere. And tell me, what's the most desperate plea for help you've ever encountered from an animal? Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss these heartwarming stories that remind us why kindness matters. Share this video with someone who needs to see that miracles happen when we choose to help those who can't help themselves. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.